Hi, Dr. Bart.
Hello, Miss Whitney. Nice to see you tonight.
Good to see you again today as well.
Absolutely. A couple times today.
It is a special treat to be in service day and afternoon. It's awesome.
Yeah. So in a moment, I'll share a little bit about my day, which has been full. This is like round 3 right here,
Beautiful.
which is
I got to
great.
tell you, Bart, I love your hoodie from our amazing shared experience this weekend,
Yes,
finishing up a yoga teacher training.
yeah, I love my new hoodie. It fits me great, and I believe I don't know if you guys can see the lettering here. This is a Sanskrit word that means to observe. Is this correct?
That is correct, Bart, to observe.
Yeah. Powerful words and powerful concept to observe. In fact, it blends perfectly into our conversation tonight.
Awesome.
Yeah, so the conversation we're going to have tonight, I want to introduce, and I want to make sure that this happens at least, I would say at least once a year, if not more, about the home medicine cabinet. And I tell you what, when I think about this category, quite frankly, this might be, I'm just going to set myself up here good. This might be as important or actually as useful as almost anything that we do here in the Health Made Simple show.
Bart, that's really saying something.
It really is. And the reason I say it that way is that, so much of the goal is to allow our bodies to remain healthy, to remain strong. And in order to do that, we have to have excellent observation. We have to be able to observe our body. And then it's one thing to have that observation and then have some knowledge and tools to help the body and essentially prevent other things that might be taking place. So when we talk about preventative health and preventative health care and preventative measures, this show tonight, and we're calling it the home medicine cabinet, the home natural medicine cabinet. Yeah, we could call it like preventative healthcare number 1.
It really is an awesome return to basics. I think we all have a practice of having some sort of medicine cabinet, like in our homes, and the kind of ditch and switch practice of making that a more natural approach, I know has had pretty far-reaching benefits for my health.
Yeah. So and I think we all have that little bit of that journey. So let me kind of start with this. And first is to say, welcome everyone. If you haven't been here in a little bit, awesome. Welcome back. If you are here every week, awesome. Love having. If you were new for the first time, welcome to the Health Made Simple show. And tonight is going to be a classic example of how our goal is just to help make health simple. We're going to keep it straightforward. And I'm going to provide you in a moment here. We'll talk about what are some of the things that should be on your home medicine, your natural home medicine cabinet. Where do we start to make some substitutions? We all have a medicine cabinet right now at home, and we have different things in there, and I'll talk to those briefly. And then understanding of which ones and when are we going to use them. I do have a couple of clinical insights that I want to get to as well. So I want to get into, all of those, and then even before I get to those, it's really the mindset that leads into that. So let's go back there in just a moment. So let me back up one step and just talk about 2 clinical insights, completely different situations. The first one's almost an update, and this is about our local Publix. So this is super cool. So there's a local Publix that's literally about a mile from my house. I don't even know if it's a mile. So it's super convenient, quite frankly. And it's going to be very convenient for a lot of the locals here. And when they first opened up, we were doing a fair amount of shopping there because of the convenience, and a lot of the things that we like to see there, organic products, cleaner products, et cetera, weren't necessarily available. And through the cleanse, we were encouraging people to go to your local purveyors, to the restaurants, and to especially Publix, because I had such a good experience in the past with Publix being willing to provide us what we were looking for, that enough people went. And I think my wife went there like 10 times and kept asking, the produce manager, hey, can we step up the game here when it comes to organic foods and organic produce? And lo and behold, you go there now, solid. Like they've already made changes. So which
For
is
all of
awesome.
us who like, yeah, like all of us locals here, that's like music to our ears because Publix is everywhere. But I know that the same system works everywhere when you communicate with these guys. Like their intention is to provide what you want to purchase.
Precisely with, and that's why I want to share this as a clinical insight, that if we are requesting and we are asking, we are putting our dollars where we care for them to be, for the products that we want and the services that we want. They'll show up more often because the men and women that are in business and own these businesses, they want your business. So I know for us at our cafe, it's 100% organic, and people want us to not to fold. They don't want us to. And I appreciate the fact that consumers come back knowing that it is a small business, and that every time a customer comes there, it matters. So I appreciate when they do come back. For those who've been there, thank you for being a customer of ours, and they want us to hold that line. And so I get it, and we will continue to do that. So hats off to my local Publix peeps. That's awesome.
3 cheers, Publix. Thank you guys.
All right, the next one is I'm not going to give too many of the details yet. I want to make more of an awareness, and this is about a situation. This happens for a lot of people, and it's a situation more so than I'm going to give a specific case. A situation where something's not okay with you, and maybe it gets to the point where you're really concerned, you have fears and worries, and your body's changing. Maybe you're having what you think is some kind of heart episode, and you say, hey, we have to go to the ER. Maybe you have a spouse or you bring yourself there, and you show up in the ER, and they run all the lab work and they run the tests, and they say, there's nothing wrong with you. This happens commonly. And I want to make a couple statements on that. One, you're not crazy. There are things that are going on in your body. I don't like to use the word, there's something wrong with you. There are massive imbalances that get you there. I will paint a picture in just a moment. The men and women who are trying to take care of you were not wrong either. They were still doing their absolute best job. They were looking for a different set of sequences. They were looking for blatantly obvious shutdown markers. They were looking for highs and lows, but they weren't necessarily looking for imbalances that create the imbalances create symptoms in the body. I want to better explain that. Our healthcare system is designed for the acute care system. You fall down, break your arm, they're the absolute best at fixing that arm. You break your leg, get in a car accident, have a trauma, have a heart attack, you go into the ER, they have the equipment, they have the technology to recognize those things. Acute care. They are not set up and not prepared for anything that is chronic, meaning long-term stress, iron deficiencies, anemias, hormone imbalances, again, stress, anxiety, depression, any of those. And especially when you start to have all of those at the same time. Because when that storm is going on and you show up with all these chronic conditions in an acute care situation, unfortunately, you're probably going to be let down and think, why aren't they fixing me? Because really they can't find anything wrong with you per se. So for all of those people that have been there and done that, that is when you want to start to explore and figure out who in your area practices functional medicine. That is what we do. We take those cases and we navigate them. We have a conversation. We look at all the different details and we help you to get to the root causes. So if you've been down that road and told many times before, there's nothing wrong with you. Again, I don't like to use that phrase and say there is something wrong with you. Yet I promise you, you are not wrong in thinking that something that is massively imbalanced, out of balance in your body, and to continue to seek care, that someone may take a different approach that may take all of these different situations into consideration while they're helping you become a better version of you.
It's a really good point, I think, to visit, Bart, because at times when we know above everyone else, like when something is awry, and I know we'll get to touch on that a little bit tonight with this home medicine cabinet. So when you have the ability to kind of ask for help, and a well-meaning professional is just not geared towards what might be going on with you, sometimes we stop looking, but the feeling persists.
Yeah.
So you're saying we can trust that.
Yes, 100, absolutely. And I think we must. And then and that's what we will talk about tonight, by being able to tap in and listen to what our own bodies are trying to talk to us about. So I'll give you an example of anxiety and shortness of breath and an iron or anemia or an iron deficiency. And ladies, listen close, because many of you are going to experience or have experienced exactly what I'm about to say. If you're a cycling woman, there's a very good chance that you have some level of anemia. It's almost assumed, quite frankly, you've been bleeding most of your life, so therefore you have a little bit of anemia. When you have anemia, you have an iron deficiency, meaning you don't get enough iron into the cell. Well, the iron is part of what holds oxygen. If you don't have enough oxygen in your cells floating through your body, and you start to get revved up a little bit, maybe you're chasing the kids around, maybe you got a couple jobs or whatever it may be, you got a lot of stress in your life, and you need your heart to be pumping more, and all of a sudden you're not getting oxygen, there's a good chance that now you're going to start to feel like tightness in your chest. That tightness in the chest is probably going to concern you. In fact, it might worry you. In fact, it might even give you some anxiety. You put these three together, low iron, tightness in the chest, and some anxiety, you're going to feel like there's something very significantly wrong with you, and off to the ER you go. And when they go, they're not going to be able to decipher those very things. Throw in there, where does this really get tricky and why the ER system is not prepared for it? Throw in there the fact that most likely it was right after ovulation or right after your period. A functional medicine doctor is going to pick that up. That's what we should do. We should be able to find and navigate that road and help you understand, okay, you not only were depleted, you were double depleted. You had no iron in your body. You were a little fatigued. You didn't get enough sleep. You needed more oxygen to get through the day. Instead, you had more caffeine. Caffeine dehydrates, creates muscle constriction. The breath started tightening up. You get a little anxiety built up in there. And next thing you know, you think you're having a heart attack. So that type of situation. And so again, yes, the observation, there's something going on. You're not crazy. And you may have to look in a different direction in order to be able to put all those pieces of the puzzle together.
So if you are in that state, Bart, where you feel like what you kind of described, would there be like a tool that one could practice at home to bring a little bit of ease to the acute feeling situation?
100%. The single best practice here, and we have vitamins and herbs and all things, but it's your breath. And to that, there are a lot of fantastic breathing techniques. And I will tell you the single one that will work the fastest and most effective for this particular situation, if you feel like you're really having a challenge or you're feeling like anxiety is tightening up your chest, it's focus on your exhale. Do your best to create a long or at least a slower exhale. And here's the neat thing about that. Excuse me. You can't be stressed and exhale slowly at the same time.
That's such a super cool shortcut to be aware of. And I'll say also something that I read in a pretty cool book talks about how just that longer, slower exhale can help with all sorts of things. So not only anxiety, but like other scenarios in which you feel like you can't quite catch your breath. There's that natural tendency to focus on the shortness of the inhale, but by nature, the exchange of the longer exhale permits the lengthened inhale.
It really does. And that's why because we're usually focused on the inhale. Yet if we just flip that over for a moment, when we know we need to relax, calm down, relax, like just kind of chill out in the moment, focus on the exhale, and inevitably, inherently, it's going to increase the inhale, which is great.
Yeah. I think it can be so cool to have these like awareness practices internally, and kind of even tapping into like when we have a headache, what is like our body kind of talking to us about when we're feeling that little scratch in our throat, Do you think those are some of the things we might tackle tonight?
Yes, 100%. So let me kind of toss out a couple reasons you would have a natural home medicine cabinet. All right. So right now you might look in your cabinet and be like, well, if my kid has a fever, I'm going to give him this. If I have a headache, I'm going to go get this. So we definitely want something for fever and headaches. For the everyday cold, which there really isn't a preventative thing out there. There is now, especially when we get done here. What we want is something that is antiviral, antibacterial, and it would be best if we could also have antifungal. Because when we have a cold, it's 50-50 if it's going to be antibacterial, antiviral, or bacterial based or viral based. And it could be both. Same thing in the lung field. If we have something going on, like a little bit of cough, we want it. It's hard to determine from the front end, is that bacterial, viral? So we want tools to handle anything that's potentially bacterial, anything that's viral. Bonus if we have something for antifungal. We definitely want things for fever. We always want to have something in our home medicine cabinet, our natural medicine cabinet, for our throat. And this is a big important reason why. Our throat is a gatekeeper. It's a gatekeeper to your lungs. So the mucosal lining that's in our throat is a much bigger game player in the game of our immune system than most people are let onto. Or I don't think enough of us healthcare providers talk about the value of having a good, strong mucosal lining. So for example, we had this thing for the last couple of years and it was airborne. If you had really good mucosal lining in your throat, a lot of times viruses can get past that. That mucosal lining is where a lot of your white blood cells are hanging out and they're just chilling. And they're going, all right, I'm just going to wait for a bad guy to come. And when it comes, I'm going to attack it. I'm going to kick its ass. Maybe I'll swell up a little bit. I'll create mucus. And then when you're done with me, you spit me out.
Something about you in like the white sweatshirt, Bart, being the white blood cell. I can really envision this. Good.
So having some type of throat support and not just a lozenge. There are some medicinal lozenges out there. Yet we'll talk about the one. I'm just going to show it right here, and I'll go into this detail later. I've showed this on the show before. I use it all the time, especially because if my throat gets scratchy first and I don't listen to that, the gates are open. The bad guys can get in. So we want to make sure that the throat is always well lubricated. Maybe it's a little bit of water for you. Maybe there's some extra herbs, whatnot. So we want to make sure that we have fever, virus, bacteria, allergies. In your medicine cabinet right now, there's something over there for allergies. And there's other options. And this is what tonight's going to be introducing. Other options are healthy, very, very effective. And I will preface all of this. The art of staying healthy is the art of awareness, the art of observation. So I'm going to encourage everyone to become better at observing their own body, not ignoring it. And I think most people that are probably listening to this, if I was to say, what's your thing? What's your one thing that happens right before you know you might get sick? And if
I know mine.
Do you know what's yours?
Yeah, so I get a little bit of like a scratchy in the back right side of my throat. And then sometimes my left ear gets a little bit clogged. And if I'm really paying attention, Bart, it can be very subtle. And I know at this point of my life where that goes if I don't quite listen when it is subtle. It gets louder.
Yeah. Mine's my ears.
Your ears?
Yeah, like deep and down, they just don't feel right. And that's my message of saying, okay, support immediately. And when you feel that thing, the most important thought must go into your brain is, I'm out of balance. The demands I put on my body have not been equal to the supply that I'm giving them. So we're out of balance. And then your immune system, those little white blood cells are chilling out, but they're being overrun. So the first thing we want to do is say, how do we support the system? How do we support the immune system? How do we support the body? And also, preferably in the moment, something that's relatively fast acting. So what you're not going to see in this home medicine cabinet are some really fantastic things. Like I'm not necessarily going to say you should always have a bottle of vitamin D or vitamin C. Those are always phenomenal for you, but they're not necessarily fast acting. They're supportive. We use them as nutrients and the body can go with them. Now, sometimes we can combine them with other concoctions, which we'll speak to tonight. So, and then also another one is you want something that home medicine cabinet if you have a burn or a cut. A lot of the old school practices of what we put on burns and cuts are not so awesome. They sometimes reduce pain, but at the cost of not healing the tissue. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to share something tonight that we use, and a lot of people are going to be familiar with it. It's a little messy, but it's absolutely fantastic. It reduces scarring, reduces pain, reduces the possibility of getting bacterial infection, and especially if it's a burn, it reduces pain almost immediately.
It's
Tissue,
very cool. I'm glad
yeah,
we're going to talk about that one.
yeah. And just so everyone can understand, the pain that comes with tissue damage is technically, this sounds kind of crazy. It's not the actual cut. It's not the actual burn. It's the decaying of the tissue. The pH is immediately imbalanced and a massive level of oxidation takes place and you're necrosing tissue. And sometimes you'll see those little white blood cells and there'll be little pus and scabs in there. The necrosing of that tissue is where the pain comes from. And of course, there's nerves and stuff in there, but that decay is what's either keeping it going or stopping it. So I'm going to introduce something tonight that can reduce that decay, that oxidation of the tissue that's now been exposed, at least by 50% right away, which is pretty cool.
Or the discomfort is the tissue dying. Is that,
Yeah.
did I hear that right?
Yeah. And of course, there's some nerve involvement right in there, but it is the decaying tissue. Yeah.
Wow. And then also, maybe tonight we'll talk about something to help with like a bellyache.
Yeah. And another one. Thank you for that. And we absolutely will, because a bellyache is something that is going to show up. Doesn't show up regularly, but it's going to show up. And when you have a bellyache, nausea, you know, whatever it comes with that, you want to have something naturally that can help soothe and coat the stomach lining and help your body kind of calm that down, so there's not an inflammatory response after that. Those inflammatory responses often then change the pH of the gut, and then it creates a chain reaction downstream, irritable bowel, a lot of other things that can then be triggered if the gut itself, the type of thing that someone might use, like an antacid or a Rolaids for, anything in that category. All right, so we probably should dive into some of these. Let's start with that thing, that back of the throat, the ear. You think you might be getting sick. Now, you might not be able to define it as, I think I'm getting a bacterial infection, or this is probably fungal, or this is, viral. You don't have to know that yet. There's going to be two things I'm going to recommend that you want to have on board. And the moment, literally the moment you feel that itty bitty thing, where now you know that itty bitty thing means you're out of balance, you're immediately going to give your team, your body, tools to fight back. And the first thing is going to be an herbal product, and it's called Andrographis complex. And I think I've spoken about it here on the Health Made Simple show before, because this is a go-to, 100% go-to. It has 3 herbs in it. It's Andrographis. Andrographis is antibacterial. It has echinacea, which is antiviral, and it has holy basil, which is antibacterial, antiviral, and antifungal. Holy basil is also very fast-acting. Andrographis is fast-acting. Echinacea, here's the cool thing about this, it literally is a brilliant product. Echinacea is a white blood cell modulator. That word, well, what does that sounds cool, but what does that mean? It means it modulates the level of white blood cells based on what the body needs, but also won't inhibit the body from functioning or damaging itself. Meaning this, if you are having the need for white blood cells, echinacea will make sure you don't go into the storm of producing too much. That storm is what we call a cytokine storm. So the herb itself helps regulate your immune system so you don't go overboard. It also revs up the system if it needs it to be fast acting. So that is what's so beautiful about this product. So that one's called Andrographis complex.
I feel like, is it, so to have some, like a product that's a modulator, Bart, would you typically find that like from herbs? It's kind of like a special thing about using herbs.
Yeah, so that's one of the beauty of many herbs. Many of them can modulate, not too high, not too low. They can regulate, and then another word we would say that they're adaptogens.
Awesome.
And that is the real beauty of so many different herbs. And then when we fine tune it, like what I just spoke of there, we're like holy basil and angiographistus, they're fast acting herbs. So it's not the type of herb that I typically would say, oh, you need to take holy basil every day. You could. There's others that I would suggest prior to that. But in that moment, when you know you're out of balance, and all of a sudden you start plowing back, and when I say plowing back, we're going to decide to not take these in such a way that I'm going to try them a little bit, and you're going to give your body everything it needs and probably a little bit more.
One of my favorite things about the andrographis, and I hope we're going to talk about this, is the flavor, which is oftentimes not something someone would say in relation to herbs, but this one is special.
Yeah, I was getting there. I was trying to pump it up how great it is before I explain this part. So to make this even more effective, you can hold this pill, this is what it is, on your tongue. And the nice thing about it is that you will recognize really fast and what it's doing. It has a super, super bitter taste to it, is what I'll say. It's got a little bit of a burn to it. And the beauty is what you're experiencing there is your body's responding and you're activating your white blood cells. So it's really, really fascinating. Every one of us should have this on our home natural medicine cabinet, every single one of us. All right, you're going to pair that one. So if you're thinking cold, you're thinking flu, I'm getting a little run down here, I'm traveling, I need to have something, I want to stay healthy through this whole, situation here. I'm going to pair that just like we often do with herbs. Herbs are activators. We're going to use some vitamins and minerals here as well. So there's one called Conjuplex. And again, I know the name means nothing. The name means nothing to me. All I want you to think this is a combination product, and it's absolutely brilliant. And it'll lean into some of the other things that I'm going to share with you tonight. So Conjuplex is a combination. So same thing. The moment you notice anything, now what we're doing, we're being really strategic. You think you're going to have a cold, you think you're going to have flu, you think something's going on, you're getting a little bit run down. You're grabbing two things. It's andrographis and Conjuplex. Andrographis is going to activate your white blood cells. It's going to help immediately start fighting anything that's bacterial, viral, and fungal. The Conjuplex is going to feed the body those particular vitamins and nutrients, of which one of them has become deficient. Specifically, it's going to be calcium, vitamin A, vitamin C, ribonucleic acid, and even a little bit of a thymus extract. So when I say this is a brilliant product, I really mean it. From the depths of smartness, this is a brilliant product. I at least have to, I won't go too long in this, I know we got a lot to cover, but I at least want to mention of the thymus. So the thymus gland is probably a long forgotten gland. That is where your body makes the majority of all the white blood cells you've ever had. It's this thymus gland, sits in the middle of the chest. You never hear anything about it. You would, if I had asked 10 people, where's your thymus gland? They would just start pointing anywhere in the body because they don't know where it is. But that thymus extract is also supportive of helping your body saying, hey, we need some white blood cells right here, right now. Obviously, the vitamin C is for colds, which is fantastic. Congestion, fantastic. Vitamin A, here's where we forget the long lost part of what the power of what vitamin A does. I talked earlier about how important the mucosal membranes are in the throat. Well, vitamin A helps support the mucosal membrane of the rest of the system, especially the digestive tract. And that's where 70 to 80% of our immune system is. So vitamin A is supportive of us enhancing our mucosal lining and our mucosal membranes throughout the course of the body. So literally a brilliant, brilliant product. Now, the other one that's in there is calcium lactate. So follow me for a moment. Think calcium, isn't this just to build bones? It helps bones, no doubt, but its best use is for fevers. And those often accompany, sometimes it's when you get a bacterial infection, sometimes when you get a viral infection, fevers and infections. So when you're thinking sinus infection, you're thinking, some type of respiratory infection, this is what we go to. This is what we use to help supply the body to make sure it has a fighting chance in whatever it's trying to fight. So an absolutely brilliant product. You use those two together and you use them until everything's gone, and you put them back on your shelf. You refill them, make sure that they're ready for the next battle. But other than that, you don't need to take those every day.
So when you say use until everything's gone, we're talking about not emptying the bottle. We're saying when the symptoms have subsided, then put it back on the shelf. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So if you get really good at this, most of the time you're talking about an evening. So when, often what people would be like, oh, you must never get sick. Well, I get a lot of signals. And if I'm not a good listener, if I don't observe properly, I will get sick just like anyone else. I've traditionally not had a very strong immune system. I grew up very compromised in that category. So it wasn't until later in life I really started practicing health. And it is at this point, and it's not that I think I have a really strong immune system. I think I know my body and act faster than ever before. And this right now this is one of my secret weapons on how I do that. I feel that thing going on in my ears, deep in my ears. It's andrographis, conjuplex, bed.
What you are talking about right now, Bart, is like some real magic stuff of nipping it in the bud when that thing starts to arise. But I know it works.
Yes, it does. And that'll be maybe the last thing we'll say about this one. It's just that it just works. It really does. And if your timing is good, now listen, folks, if you're deep in the throes and you get all this congestion and there's snot coming out of every part of your body and all that kind of stuff, is it supportive? 100%. It'll knock down probably the duration that you're going to have it. But once you're in a cytokine storm, once you're having that white blood cell reaction, it goes all the way to the end. And anything that shuts it off in the middle, you got to be careful, right? You're probably really interfering with the detox pathway at that point. But once all of that has started, it has to run its course. So the whole goal here, and listen, you're probably still going to need them, but I'm telling you in advance, it won't make them all go away. And so you don't call me and be like, Dr. Bart, those didn't work at all. I took them when I was sick and they didn't work. The whole goal is support your body while it's messaging you. And then you kind of create the balance where you were out of balance. Hopefully you don't get into that full symptomatic situation.
Beautiful. And just before we switch gears, Bart, we just had a question come in on Zoom from our friend Sean. The question is, can you take too much echinacea? I know that's one of the products in the andrographis complex.
I think the safe answer is you can take too much of anything, right? So, always check with your doctor, right? And because that's a wide open question. So yes, you could take too much of anything. There is, if it's to echinacea specifically, sometimes on the internet, they'll read, though, you shouldn't take echinacea every day. Outdated, poor studies. In the healthcare world, we recommend, I was asked the other day, if I get stuck on an island, on a deserted island, I can only bring one herb with me, one product with me. What do I bring? It's echinacea. And I'd use it every day because of its properties, because it has the white blood cell modulation, because of the building up stamina. So we know so much about echinacea right now, more than we did years ago, more than what most of Dr. Google says. So make sure that question, is there too much? Always. There's too much of anything. Too much water will drown you, right?
True that.
Yeah.
All right. What will be the next ailment that we will tackle, Bart?
Let's talk about the one that we would use for, let's say, the allergy situation, the stuffiness, the congestion in the morning. So all of that's created by a histamine response. Typically, it's either allergy related or it's diet related. It's, flip a coin usually. So there's a fantastic property called Antranex. Antranex, so this is not an antihistamine, but it has the effect of antihistamine. This is also something, if my dogs go out and they stick their faces in an ant pile and they get bit by a whole bunch of ants and their faces blow up, this is what they get. And it works very, very effective, and it's very safe. It's a beef liver extract, and it has an antihistamine effect on the body. And really what it does, it helps the liver drain. So what happens is when we get an influx of something, maybe we've been bitten by something, a bee sting, an ant sting, an ant bite, maybe it's pollen, we get too much in the body at one time, and our bodies have a massive response. The liver basically fills up, and when it fills up and it can't handle all the toxins coming in, it produces more histamine. Histamine is in response to this overload of this foreign things coming in, whether it's pollen or maybe a poison from a sting or something. So the goal is that we reduce how full the liver is. We use something to help drain the liver so it doesn't have to produce as much histamine. So absolutely fantastic. If you wake up in the mornings, you're all stuffy, you take, a small handful, either 4 or 5, drain it out. And again, this is something that if you don't have congestion, you don't need to take it. But if you need to use something that you would benefit from the antihistamine effect, Antronex is a nice natural way. And again, it's not an antihistamine, but it works in that capacity of helping your body drain the liver so the liver doesn't have to produce as much histamine.
So I know sometimes we talk about having like a little bit of congestion when you wake up in the morning that is not seasonal. Sometimes that can be like a little bit of gluten and dairy and like sugar in your diet. Would you say that Antronex is for like a different purpose than that?
Well, it certainly would work at that. Well, the first thing I would say, again, observation. So if you're waking up stuffy, first thing I would tell you is this: instead of just blaming on the outside in, let's observe what are we doing with our actions, especially if you're waking up in the morning thinking that you have allergies every morning. There's a strong likelihood that the food you're eating at night is not necessarily serving you. You might be having a glass of wine late at night. And again, you can congest the liver and your body produces histamine. It can congest you. It's an inflammatory response at that point. And again, that's again, same thing. We can help reduce anything that's inflammatory, especially if it's, diet or toxin based. So gluten will do that. Gluten will wake you wake up feeling puffy and stuffed. Sometimes, alcohol can do it. So a good observation of how that is getting there, when and why. I find most of the time most people think they have allergies and they don't. They just have habits that they're not connecting the dots. And to answer your question, yes, Antronex work fantastic for those. And again, short term, your drainage goes away, you feel good, put it back in your health medicine cabinet.
That's so beautiful. We had another question come in about Antronex, Bart. So for your dogs, like how much do you give them?
So in this particular situation, we will give them 2 or 3. So they're about 50 pounds, roughly, depending on which one pick up. Let's say they're 50 pounds. I have no problem giving them. So here's the nice thing. So remember, these are not drugs. It literally, Antronex is a beef liver extract. And so it comes from a whole food source. Worst case scenario, they get an expensive poop. That's the worst case scenario in this situation. If I know that they are having kind of an allergic response to something, I'll probably give them 4 for the first 2 or 3 hours in a row, and then I reduce that dose, hoping that comes down as well.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, so we've got Conjuplex and Andrographis to use in concert for when the ears get weird, the throat does the thing, whatever your thing is. We have got this magical Antronex for clearing out the liver in the morning. What's next, Bart?
Let's talk about if you have a burn or a cut, or maybe even you have a dog bite.
The green stuff. Let's do it.
So I really meant to bring a tube up here, but I did not have one with me. So, all right. So the next one I want to talk about is it comes in a tube and it's an ointment, and it's called chlorophyll complex paste or ointment, chlorophyll complex ointment. To describe this, picture would have been, or me showing you would have really been helpful. Next time I'll do that. But nonetheless, it is chlorophyll, and chlorophyll is essentially plant blood. So if you imagine way back in the day, you're a little kid, or maybe not so little kid, and you run around and you had your jeans on and you wiped out in the grass, and your jeans stained green. That's chlorophyll that does that. And essentially chlorophyll is plant blood, and it's one of the single healthiest things that we could put in the human body. So really, really cool. So in the event that you cut yourself, you have an open wound and you want to protect that wound, You want to decrease the pain. You want to reduce the amount of scar tissue that is going to happen in there. And quite frankly, you just want this thing to heal. Ulcers, for that matter, whatever it may be. If you have open wounds, yes, it's going to be messy. Most people won't understand this. This used to be used a long, long time ago in the armed forces for our soldiers that were shot. They would pack it with chlorophyll, and it worked phenomenal for them. And it would keep things from getting infected. It would reduce pain. It would make a mess. Unfortunately, it was too expensive for them to do, but it's still to this day is probably one of the single best things you can use in your body. So having a little tube of this stuff, and it'll last you forever. And anytime you have a cut and you want there to be reduced pain, you want there to be reduced scarring, you want to make sure that we're not going to get a bacterial infection, you put this on it.
It's a fun color. So even though Bart doesn't have one to show you right now, you might imagine like a small paint tube with like very vibrant green. Like think about what plant blood would look like. That's what this looks like. If it gets anywhere, it might stay there forever. The jeans that you're sliding on, the shirt, be aware, but worth it, man.
Yeah. So, I've used it a fair amount, and it's not uncommon that maybe I'll get a cut or a scratch from the dogs, and I'll clean, I'll wash it out with some water, and I'll put chlorophyll on it, and I'll wrap it up and just keep it there. And lo and behold, so it's not uncommon. Let's just say I put my fingers where they didn't belong, which would often be like a dog's mouth while in the middle of them talking things out.
Like a weekly thing.
Cool. A weekly thing. So it's not uncommon that my fingers get bit. Like if you look at them, they're all like chewed up. And what I'll do is immediately I'll get the chlorophyll, put it all over there, and I put a Band-Aid loosely over it. So I still want the oxygen in there. And I leave that Band-Aid on there, and I leave that chlorophyll on there until basically it wears off. So, and then when it comes off, I'm always amazed on how well it heals up and how fast it heals up. So like you did say, it will most likely create a little bit of a mess. Don't be afraid of the mess when it comes to healing. It's one of those do whatever it takes.
It's so cool. I never thought about like skinning my knee kind of on the ground, that being the chlorophyll that never came out of my jeans.
Yeah. Yeah. And, thinking of skinning your knee on the ground, that would be something you could then put a little chlorophyll on again, reduce the scarring, reduce the pain, makes a little mess. So be it.
Yeah, we can handle a little bit of mess.
Yeah.
To heal. Beautiful. Okay, so we got chlorophyll complex ointment for skin stuff.
Mm-hmm. So the next one I want to talk about which is an absolute must. Everyone has to have a big old bottle of what's called calcium lactate powder.
It's a good one.
Yes, and especially my mamas out there, an absolute must. My dogs are hungry. So this is an absolute must. Your children are going to experience fevers, not because they're sick or not because they're healthy, because that's what little kids do in order to develop antibodies. It's part of it. So we're going to see them have fevers. Every mother knows, or I think most mothers know, that the fever is important because it kills things off, especially like things like bacteria and some viral things. And so we want to run the course of the fever. The bummer is that we do never, never, never want our loved ones to suffer. So we're thinking, what can we do? And I'm going to throw a little warning out there. And every now and then, Tylenol for a young child is not okay. Mm. And if for some reason someone else is telling you that it is, you got to look a little deeper into the impact of what Tylenol does. Within 4 hours, it changes the microbiome of the gut. It loosens tight junctions. And what does that mean? It begins the process of leaky gut. And for a young child, it is that compound. Let's just say you just do Tylenol twice a year. Not good. So we think it's okay because we got them out of pain, but now they're going to have different types of pains unassociated to it. So having alternative sources and knowing that they're safe and that they're gentle and they're effective, very, very good. So one, there's something called calcium lactate powder. It's a powder that you could literally put in your water. There happens to be some in here right now. It's also very good if you think you've been pushing it. It's one of the electrolytes that's very good to replenish in your body, because if you've been pushing it, speaking a lot, using a lot of muscular activity, you bleed all that out. Let's say you sweat. You've ever seen a white ring on your shirt? or where your
Yep.
sweat dries up, that's calcium that you've leached out of your body. Now you're going to be fatigued. So one of the beautiful ways, and this is total side topic, you could literally just take a scoop of the calcium lactate, put it in your smoothie, put it in your water, like I did here tonight, and you start to replenish all those tissues that have been drained out. It is an electrolyte. If you don't have the electrical impulses, you won't have energy. Calcium. All right. Calcium.
They're talking tonight.
Yeah.
They love calcium.
I'm gonna try to pardon my wife here. I'll call my wife. Let's see if she will come get these dogs. The calcium, it's one of the things that we forget about calcium is that calcium is the very first responder for anything that's attacking a cell. The very, very first thing that your body uses is calcium. So if we do not have enough calcium, we become vulnerable. And calcium is used on everything. It's used on every toxin, everything that comes into the body. Your body will use calcium for exchanges. It gives up hydrogen. So all different types of things. So my favorite thing is anytime you're not feeling well and you're a little bit run down, you're a little bit low on energy, you can put this in your bottle. You can put, like I said, in a smoothie and water. Then also, this is my favorite thing for it, is children that have fevers. Literally put it in their bottles. Hopefully they're not juice bottles full of sugar. But if that was the case, you could do that too. And there's no taste to it. It's a little gritty, so you can hide it in yogurt. You can hide it in anything. The beauty with the fever, what the calcium does for the fever is it will reduce. Remember, we're supplying calcium back to the tissue. The reason that fevers are painful is that the calcium has been all leached out and your muscles hurt. When you replace the calcium back into the tissue, you won't be in as much pain, but you're allowing the immune system to still do its job.
That's pretty exciting.
Okay, hopefully that wasn't confusing. So you're in pain in a fever because your body is leaching out its calcium. When you replenish the calcium, will reduce the pain, but you still have the immune response. So mamas, have calcium lactate on your shelf at home. And here's what I'll tell you to do. This is an open invitation. Your kid has a fever, you forget what to do, call our studio. Everyone on my team is very familiar with what you do. They're going to tell you, how big's your baby? They're going to say, oh, it's 3 years old. All right, take about a half a scoop. The worst case scenario, if you take too much calcium, worst case scenario, you poop a lot. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I know we're not talking about like the sun protocol tonight, but if I'm not mistaken, calcium's also pretty magic in that one too. Like it has so many wonderful applications for the body.
It really does. And that's in the same light. So what happens is when we are in too much sun, again, the first thing to defend all the tissues in the body, the skin and the skin, everything is calcium. So when your body's defending the sun, and it runs out of calcium, you burn. So in the event, and that is part of our sun protocol, which we'll bring that up. We'll bring that up when we get back into the sun time. But calcium, we use calcium lactate, we use cataplex C, and then we use something called vitamin F or cataplex F, which drives that calcium back into the tissue. So the whole goal is to get that calcium back into the tissue. So calcium lactate, absolutely every mama should have one on their on their health medicine cabinet. There's no doubt about it. This should be part of it. And the Conjuplex that we spoke of earlier comes in a child's version. The herbs, you really can't get, well, I take it back. You can get herbs in child version. There's always going to be blended to something else that's not an herb. But there's Conjuplex for children that are chewable. And this is often what we'll send, like if the parents are telling me, oh, my kids are, bringing home sickness all the time. All right, cool. Let's start having them chewing Conjuplex a couple times, a day. And even if they didn't use the herbs, because sometimes the herbs, kids aren't as likely to take them because they have a little bit of a kick to them. But the Conjuplex chewable is absolutely fantastic for toddlers.
There have literally been days we've had some Conjuplex chewables out for like samples, and like I've had a few because they tasted nice. They're very good.
Yeah. So, so a huge fan of having calcium lactate in the house at all times. There's so many other uses for it as well.
So let's just do a quick follow-up question before we dive into our maybe last one or two products. Is the powder calcium form the same as calcium lactate? This is a question from Carla on Zoom.
Carla, it is. And yet to get the dosing, I'll share this with you. So when you get the little pills, the calcium lactate, it's the exact same thing. They're just crushed up. So typically what I'd have someone take is 1 tablespoon, and it comes with like a little scooper, 1 tablespoon, which would be the equivalent of about 20 of those pills. So because that gets into people's heads, like, oh my God, I can't take that much. And it's perfectly fine. It's water soluble. That's the beauty of the calcium lactate. The beauty of it is that if you can't use it, your body's going to get rid of it. So yes, but be willing if you have the pills, because you get a whole bunch in the bottle, just be willing to take a whole bunch of them. So one more thing about that, I think it's real important people understand. So there's another symptom that people get, and it's a cold sore. So they, it's part of the herpes family. Yet the single best thing for anything in that herpes simplex family is calcium lactate. It is the single number one thing we do. Again, remember, the tissue broke down and you get a cold sore. So at the beginning of the show, I said, this is probably one of the single most fundamental best shows that we could share with people about just taking care of ourselves. That right there, just understanding that calcium protects the skin, all of us. And I'm not talking about eating these big old calcium carbonate pills. No, there's different types of calcium. Calcium lactate is water soluble, very easy for your body to absorb. If you can't use it, you get rid of it. So, if you ever have cold sores, if you have the herpes simplex, any of the complexes, this is the single best remedy for it. In fact,
and Bart, if you go ahead.
I was going to say the real quick one I use calcium lactate and Contraplex for that.
Oh, awesome. And like because we're talking about the calcium lactate powder, is that a topical application or would that be internal?
Internal.
Cool.
Yeah, you take it, and then we're going to feed the body, and the body is going to use it as support to protect that tissue.
Beautiful. So that's a great one to have in the cabinet for sure. Calcium lactate powder.
All right. Next up, let's talk about the gut. So inevitably, somewhere through the course of the year, once or twice a year, someone in the family has something going on with their gut, right? Probably we talk about gut health all the time, but I'm talking about those moments where like you got gut pain, you got stomach pain, you're cramping, something's going on wrong, you don't feel good. And relief isn't far away. We use a product called Gastrex. So Gastrex,
real good stuff. Keep going, Bart.
It's the bomb. And so this is super, super good, especially for a lot of my ladies, and I hate to put it that way, but a lot of my ladies who around their cycle often have, or it's not uncommon that they also have some disrupted microbiome stuff going on, their pH in their gut's completely off. This is super, super soothing, very fast. There's several different things in Gastrex, but I'll speak to one of them. It's called silica, and silica will literally help heal the intestinal lining. So in the event that your pH has been off, it's too acidic, it's not acidic enough, whatever it may be, you ate the wrong food, maybe there's some other activity taking place, your body's pH is off, maybe you've got a little bit of something else going on. Using Gastrex, and usually use a pretty good dosing where you'll use 4 or 5 at a time, and you'll do that maybe the first sign of it often, that's enough. That's the really cool part about this. Usually that's enough to calm you down and you don't need anything. And then sometimes you might need another dose a couple hours later. And next thing you know, that deep, gnarly gut pain is it's gone.
It's so relieving when gut pain is gone. And I know that I've also seen maybe sometimes you can open up the capsule of the Gastrex and kind of sprinkle it into water. Is that right?
Yeah, so that the beauty, because it is a capsule, you certainly can do that. And again, because it's whole foods, so you'd be mixing. I don't know how well that's going to taste. Yet
maybe I think we might have been offering it to some pups, possibly.
Yeah, so we use this with our dogs. We pretty much anything that's a whole food. There are some caveats, and we're going to bring back our special guest to talk about those things.
Love it, Kelly. Awesome.
Yeah, so these are great for kids, and that's the times when we'll use it more. We'll blend them, we'll mix it up, like we'll dump them out, we'll put it in something, maybe mix it up with a banana or something like that, but something that's soothing. And the beauty is, and again, 1 capsule is not going to do it. Typically, we'll need 4 or 5, and you probably need 1 to 2 doses of that. But typically, that will do a really good job and get you out of that moment that's really uncomfortable, etc.
Beautiful. So we got Gastrex for the gut. Bart, I know that you showed us basically what all of us in the office have as our best friend. We are never without it. So in our studio, we have like Bart on the first floor. We've got yoga on the third floor. And I can tell you this product is hidden on the altar for like if you're presenting a yoga class and you got a little like sore throat, we've always got it on hand.
Yeah, and that's the herbal throat spray. So having throat support and being able to lubricate, which is a big part of our immune system. Remember, this is part of the innate immune system, our ability to build mucus, just like having a tear or, having a runny nose. That's all part of that innate immune system. So important. That's the one that's just protecting us, and it's using its tools. It uses a tear, it uses a runny nose, it uses phlegm in the throat. We need to have the capacity to make that. And if you don't have good mucus in your throat because your throat is dry, you've been talking too much, maybe you're teaching a yoga class, you're talking with a private, you're talking on the phone with a friend, and next thing you know, you've dehydrated your throat. Simultaneously, you are now vulnerable for the bad guys getting in. So your little white blood cells aren't where they need to be. So just having this around, absolutely fantastic. It was one of the ones during, that moment, these last 2 years, say, listen, if you were going to go out and about, more protective than anything else anyone was suggesting, spray your throat, strengthen the innate immune system, the part that's really going to defend you, and you're going to be as protected as you're possibly going to get versus just other things.
I know it's great for an airplane. It's great for a hotel. It's great for a presentation like what you did today, Bart.
Yep.
It's a good one.
Yeah, 100%. So there's a couple. Yeah. So absolutely fantastic herbal throat spray. So all of these that we're talking about should just be on your medicine cabinet. So I know that you're going to have an incredible package put together that you're going to be able to offer our listeners a big old discount for them. And we usually don't discount things. So that's how important I think it is everyone have something like this to discount it. But what's not on that list, and correct me if I'm wrong, are the pain relievers, Salagesic or Nervogesic. Is that correct?
That's correct, Bart. Yeah.
Okay. So I think it was last week or the last show that we had, we talked about pain relievers. Kind of left those off specifically because, and I think it's very important on your home medicine cabinet, you have to have a pain reliever, 100%. You have one right now. It's in the form of something else. Hopefully it's not Tylenol. Hopefully it's not like oxycodone or something like that. Hopefully whatever's in there is gentle on the body. So there's 2 things that I would suggest when it comes to pain. It's Salagesic, and that would be the best thing if you have muscle ache sores, you work hard, maybe you're working construction, you're very physical with your body, you exercise hard, and you want something to relieve headaches, you want something to relieve body aches, pain, sores, cramping from menstrual cramping, any of those stuff. Salagesic is absolutely fantastic. And again, use it as you need it. Pain goes away, it goes away. In the event that you experience a little bit more nerve pain, so I would really suggest you probably have both of these because you don't want to be caught with nerve pain without some kind of support. So if you're having nerve pain, there's something that's called the Nervogesic. We covered this, I think it was just last week, a fair amount. And the beauty of this herb is that there's a couple of different, cordialis, Jamaica dogwood, and there's some fantastic herbs in there that sedate the body a little bit. So it down regulates the nervous system, the part that's hyperactive. So when we have pain, we have this hyperactivity of our nervous system. So it down regulates that, so you have less pain. And again, same thing, you use it as you need it. And then when you don't need it, you put it away. Particularly if you have issues with pain keeping you up at night or pain interfering with sleep, Nervogesic's your best friend.
I wonder, Bart, if we could just toss in one question that came in through Facebook from Macy. Is this, I think maybe specifically the Salagesic and or the Nervogesic, is it safe for breastfeeding mamas?
Yeah, I'm okay with both of those. And then what I would suggest yes, the answer is yes. They can both be fine there. And again, and it's a nice question because that should always be asked. Because here's the thing. If that question makes you, thank you for the question. If you ask most doctors out there, would Tylenol be okay for a mother nursing? They're going to say yes. And they're going to say, is aspirin okay? They're going to say yes. A little bit doesn't matter. So we have to then say, well, what really matters, right? Is if we downregulate stomach function, we just, we change pH in the gut, we break down the microbiome a little bit, what really matters? So super, though we have to ask those questions around the board, and hopefully, Macy, you'll ask those, not when it just comes to vitamins and minerals or, herbs, but ask for everything that goes into the body. And then the challenge too, is that often drugs and medications are not held to the same standard as a lot of our vitamins and minerals are, meaning that we'll say, what are the side effects? And there's a long list and we just flat out ignore them. We've become, it's almost comical, right? Like if you listen closely to them, sometimes I'll be listening, I'll watch a football game and I'll hear something. I'll be like, possible death. I'm like, did I just hear that right? And I'll rewind it. And literally it'll say possible death. And I'm thinking to myself, did anyone listen to that? Because a possible side effect is death. And it's not uncommon from a lot of medications. So thank you for the question, Macy. And we always want to check. And I would say this too. Always go to your doctor. Always, whether it be an herb or you have a question, check specifically with exactly what you got going on, if that one particular one is right for you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Bart. Well, we find ourselves at the end of the show here. So I'm going to ask the last great question. What is one step that our listeners can take towards becoming superhuman, Bart?
Yeah, so I'm pointing to my shirt this time, my new sweatshirt, and I'm going to say, I think part of being a great human, a great superhuman, is the ability to observe not just others, but ourselves. And if we do this on all levels, on the words that we use, the actions we take, the thoughts that we have, the feedback that our body gives us. So if we become great at observing ourselves, I think we are definitely on the path of becoming superhuman.
Beautiful, guys. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for the Health Made Simple show.
Of course, thank you guys for being here once again. Keep doing the thing. Keep sharing it out. Keep spreading love. You never know how many other lives you can affect by just sharing the one little thing. And of course, keep doing your thing. Keep taking deliberate action for your mind, your body, overall wellness. Y'all be awesome.